It is overtime here at Old Favorite Friday, and we are continuing the conversation about Estrella's 1906 Reserva Especial. Ralph, this is the beer I had one time before this, right? I got one 6-pack. I think I was on vacation. It might even have been like in Orlando or something. I picked it up at a store and brought it to the hotel. I love this beer. Had not seen it since. I ran across it at Total Wine a couple days ago. Picked it up. And I remember loving this beer, and it's been reinforced. They call it Helles Bock. It's a lager. It's a malty lager with a beautiful kind of amber color, great clarity. You can't see it because there's a little bit of condensation on the glass, but big, malty, extremely drinkable and flavorful, 6.5% alcohol. I mean, we love malty lagers. We're talking about this is the season for Marzens, right?
Yep.
This isn't quite that heavy, but this is still in the same family.
Mm-hmm. And I really like it because I almost get like as far as the flavor, I get like a chocolate, and I know you said vanilla, but there's like a roast character to me that I really dig because they've got a nice hop bitterness, so it's not all just malt derived, but with whatever that roast character is, whether they use a biscuit or some kind of toasted wheat, whatever they use to derive that, it's really playing well with that hop character because it's like a heavy enough breadiness where it kind of balances off. So you get this heavy bread that before it gets too overwhelmed, then you get that nice firm bitterness, and it's loud enough where you're like, oh, they used some hops in this beer. They weren't shy with the hops.
No, it finishes dry. It's got a little tinge of bitterness. It gives it that balance. A good beer should tick those boxes so that each one of the flavors can speak for itself and each one of the ingredients, right? We don't necessarily want this to be balanced towards bitterness like a classic West Coast IPA. We want to add some bitterness there. It makes it a little more refreshing. It makes it a little less cloying. And when you have that kind of malt backbone, I think it's really important to have that balance. I came across this beer, and I have a old friend of mine, I haven't seen in a long time, Tom Barris. He is a big muckety muck at Estrella. He runs I think the entire Southeast region as a salesperson or a manager or something. Tom's a big important guy there. And I like Estrella. It's never been like my favorite beer brand. I've always had a bias against Estrella just because they're a massive beer brand, right? And when I saw this, and I know, thinking about Tom, I was like, oh, this looks good. I like a Helles Bock. This will be interesting to try. And then when I was blown away by this, it just exposes those biases of seeing a brand that might be so popular and so well known or makes so much beer that you just kind of think like, oh, they can't make a great beer. Well, that's complete nonsense. This is an incredibly well-made, flavorful, complex, interesting lager by a massive macro brand.
Mm-hmm. And I'm super glad that you touched on it because that's one of the things I noticed more and more, whether it's craft beer or just even sometimes when we're trying to dissect our own beers, we put certain things on pedestals, not realizing that it's just brand recognition. And in this case, something that you might have, passed by before, you gave it a shot and now you're enjoying it. Where so many times it does just go back to, it's like, this should be great or this should be bad because of the brand. And that most of the time is not only not the case, but then you miss so much that they do because it's just, you're like, it's ingrained to just assume things are the way they are.
That's an incredible point. I mean, look at it that way. You miss things, right? Because you have personal biases against a kind of brewery, either because of their size or location or what have you, or the kind of beers that they do, you don't give yourself an opportunity to try really, really good beers. And listen, Old Favorite Friday, in very many ways, it's all about this, right? It's all about the beers that you see all the time, maybe, that you kind of, take it for granted. It's always around. The Sierra Nevada Pale Ales of the world, right? Or beers from like Guinness, and we talk about foreign stout, and say, man, one of the best stouts in production bar none, but people don't look at it that way because Guinness is on draft in every single pub in the world, right? So I love featuring this beer, and it's a eureka moment. Like, I came across this beer, I had a 6-pack, I loved every sip of it, I was thrilled to have it, and then I couldn't find it. And thankfully I have, and because I have now, this will be a staple for me because a drinkable malt-forward lager, and by the way, I don't know if this is a seasonal or not, it might be, but a drinkable malt flavor forward lager is everything that I want in an everyday drinking beer, right? It's the reason why I love Copper Point's Amber Lager. It's the reason why I do backflips when Marsden's comes out, because it's a beer to me more than anything.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, especially if you are someone who likes malt pour lagers, amber lagers, anything in kind of the realm that you just talked about, it kind of behooves you to at least try this beer, because there's so many brands out there, they're so big, we just assume they're going to be around forever, and we're always going to be able to get this beer. And like, whether it's just they go out of your distro area or they get bought by somebody, if you find a beer like this that maybe you would pass by and you realize like you shouldn't be, I would say get as much as you can, because you never know when it'll be in the news and they're like, oh yeah, you can no longer get this. So.
I hoarded a bunch of Anchor Porter. Recently I found every single 6-pack I could of beer that's been featured on Old Favorite Friday, because they were sold or going out of business. That still might be up in the air. I guess some employees are trying to buy the company, but also the fact that this beer just might not be in production forever. This beer's been in production for almost 20 years from the little research that I was able to do. But if it's not super popular or what have you, it might go out of production, or like you said, it might not be available in your area. So listen, I highly recommend you check this beer out. This is Estrella's. It's 1926 Reserva Special. They have several beers that have a similar kind of vibe and feel to them. They have the 1906 label on them, I believe. Other ones I haven't seen before, but I saw them on their website when I was doing some research, and they're just wonderful. The beers from Estrella are very, very good. Once again, shout out to Tom Barris, good friend of mine. I wish I'd gotten a chance to see him more often, but he's a big cheerleader, obviously, for his brand. And this is a home run, man. This is a home run beer. It's incredibly flavorful, and you're doing yourself a disservice if you look over it, because it's from a brand that you don't normally pick up.
Certainly.
So, sorry, I had to take one more drink because I'm enjoying it so much. So, please poke around on the channel, find some more videos of Ralph and I and other guests talking about incredible, classic, wonderful beers that you might have overlooked. And also, tell us what we should be drinking for Old Favorite Friday. I find a lot of these myself, but a lot of the beers that we feature are beers that people recommend to us. Some of them we love, and we're like, oh my God, I can't believe we forgot about that one. Other ones are beers we try for the first time, and we saw that a week or so ago when we had a new pumpkin beer for the first time. So this is really exciting for me to get a chance to try new beers as well and revisit ones that we love. And we'll see you next week for Old Favorite Friday. Cheers.